Good afternoon. Good afternoon. While I am greeting you, we're also making sure that the level on the speaker is good. Can everyone hear me without being blasted out? Oh, perfect. My name is Sunshine Day, and while it is an honor for me to facilitate and officiate this afternoon's memorial service, it is indeed with great sadness and joy in my heart that I facilitate our time together as we come together to celebrate and to remember Dave and to remember the gift that he has been in our life, and to remember all the times of joy, all the times of pain, all the time of laughter, of struggle, of being in the struggle, of being in the movement, and then indeed being in the joy. So though this is not a religious ceremony and occasion, it is indeed one that is held with the highest esteem and honor, as we indeed honor his life and as we indeed celebrate the gift that he has been in our life. I know that many of you have had an opportunity to begin to talk amongst yourselves some of those stories, some of those times, some of the things that he would say, his look, or how he would sit and be. And though that might have been for the benefit of whoever you were talking with at the time, we will have an opportunity for many of you to come and to speak and to maybe share some of those things that can be shared publicly with all of us, and in particular with the family members that are here. I want to acknowledge you, Donna. Thank you so much for being here, and our condolences. Our condolences. Well, you know, Dave stood 6 feet 7 inches tall, right?
6 feet 7 and a half.
7, okay, let's not forget the half, because that's important. 7.5 inches tall. And he was born in 1940 on August the 31st in Portland, Oregon. And in his childhood, he enjoyed music. And he was a great lover of Beethoven and Chopin, and actually he originated and played many compositions of his own in a concert at the age of 12. This highly gifted young man indeed grew up with these ideas and these thoughts and this way of seeing the world. Intelligent, indeed, as he got his bachelor's and his master's degree, and he didn't just absorb that knowledge for himself. It wasn't like he said, I'm gonna just take this, and this is gonna be my information and my knowledge. No. There was that part of Dave that we know that was a person who shared. And so he became a teacher for quite some time. And he shared what he learned at Tufts University. And even though his politics were not well received by all, it didn't stop him from being a forward thinker. It never stopped him from pursuing equality and justice. It never stopped him from caring for those who have been marginalized, those who were considered disposable people. He said there are no disposable people. His politics indeed had him have a great love and interest for how people with HIV and AIDS were being mistreated and disposed of and unloved. He had a great love for folks who face addiction and alcoholism. And indeed, he also had a great love for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. His politics were indeed about humanity, and his politics were indeed about how we create and co-create a world where folks can experience freedom and be free. As I had the great pleasure of being and sitting in rooms with Dave, I know that many of you have had that opportunity, and he was a co-founding member, a founding member of the Atlantic Alama Club, which is a 12-step recovery club specifically for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. We love what he has done for us as a community, but indeed, when it happens for one, it happens for all. But because from his experience and his persistence and his advocacy and his activism, so much has been branched off from that place. And for that, we are indeed forever grateful. Not only did he stand 7.5 inches tall, he indeed has been a giant in our hearts and in our communities. And he will live as that forevermore. So today we gather to remember him and to celebrate his life and to talk about how his life has touched and impacted each of us. So this is the opportunity now. I know that I've talked with several of you who are going to come forth and share with us a story, a memory, a smile, something that you would have us to know as we begin our grieving process and as we begin our celebration of his life. So if you would indeed take just a few minutes to come forth, you can come forth here and just line up one after the other, or just come up and begin celebrating his life through your words. And if you would also introduce yourselves, even though most of us know who you are, there are some of us who don't know, so tell us who you are and your relationship with Dave.
Well, I doubt that very many people here do know who I am. My name is Bill Orton, and I know Jim. Bill's been around. I see Denise. I see a few people I know. I worked with Betty Carnett. Betty Carnett pulled me out of a general office job and made me her writer, her receptionist, her scheduler, her everything in her office, who wasn't Roger Powell, the chief of staff, Joanne Payne, the field deputy. And I wondered a lot about politics in that first job. I've worked for 5 lawmakers. Betty was my first. Oh, there's Jerry. And what I saw was a very unusual thing. Well, Jim would come in, and I would think, boy, he's tall. And Roger Powell, of course, anyone who knows him, he looks like a ship's captain. Giant. Betty, maybe 5'2", maybe. And I thought, well, there's something happening here. And then, the very first time I saw him, I was sitting at my desk, and in comes Dave Newell. And I look up, and he's just smiling. And he wanted Betty's statement for the 54th Assembly District Committee. That was his role at the time. And so, Betty Carnett, among her very many other political skills, managed to create a tall, short coalition. And Dave Newell was at the heart of it. When Dan Baker was running for mayor, and I looked and I said, I know why he's doing this, because Dan was tall. Yeah. So the reality is that our politics are many things, but when you look beyond the artificial differences, as Dave showed, we're all the same. We all struggle with the same things. And so that would be my thanks to Dave, is a lesson from a tall man.
my name's Jeff, and I'm an alcoholic. I've known Dave for quite a long time. He was, for the last 17 years, he was my sponsor in the day. Dave and I had an interesting relationship. I always had a hard time talking to Dave. I loved Dave, but he was so intelligent. Not. Not like that. I mean, he was, classical music and opera and all of these highbrow things. But we would still have good conversations, especially about AA. And, if I had a problem, I could always go to him. He'd be very quiet about it and just make some real small comments. But it would be what I needed to hear. And I used to watch Dave over the years, and he would help out an awful lot of people. And sometimes I would think, I don't know about that. But when things didn't quite work out, instead of doing like I would do, getting his input, David would talk to me about this part of it. What he thought maybe he had done wrong. And that was, to me, kind of an indication of what kind of person he was, to be able to look at himself and let that be his focus. So I really admired him, and I will miss him at the Friday night meeting especially, which is where I always met with him. And someone reminded me earlier, there used to be another David Combs, I remember his name now, 3 really tall guys. And Dave was actually a little bit taller than Dave Newell. We would call him Big Dave, and we would call Dave Newell Little Dave. I don't imagine he was called Little Dave very often. So Dave was a great guy, and I'll miss him.
Hi, I'm Mina Meyer, and we first, my wife and I, back before we were wives, met Dave before we even moved to Long Beach, when we were all active in a group called Lavender and Red Union, and we worked with Dave in that group. And then after that, we moved to Long Beach, and we were all active in Lavachi, which some of you may remember, which was Long Beach Area Citizens Involved. And that group worked to put gay rights on the city council's agenda, and that's where we first got some rights in Long Beach. And at the same time, we joined as new Long Beach folk. This is some 35 years ago. We joined Lambda Democratic Club, and Dave was active in that. And he was the president, in fact, at one point. And so we worked with him in Lambda. And then Dave and I were both appointed to the Commission on Human Relations. And so we both served on that commission at the same time. And, excuse me, and so I worked with him on that. And it just sort of goes on and on with the ways our paths crossed. And of course, we were friends. We became friends over the years and saw each other socially. And Dave was just a terrific guy. And I just liked him. I cared about him. And so did everybody else that I knew. And he was always there. And I just felt badly that he went too soon. So Because that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm one of Dave's former students at Cypress College. I was there 17 years ago. Now, Dave, Dr. Newell, taught the two hardest math classes for business students. Now, mind you, we're business students, so nobody was going to accuse us of being the next Da Vinci. Okay? So what we knew was, okay, if you can't pass your finite class, you can't pass calculus, go take Newell. Who's this Newell guy? So I signed up for it. It's a night class because I'm sure, as many of you know, he taught at several different campuses. I found out why later, and I won't get into that, but we were just fortunate that he taught these classes at the night school at Cypress. Well, one of the biggest reasons why he was so popular to take, everybody knows he's a brilliant person. And he was able to translate that brilliance to teaching us so we could understand it. Now, the only thing you knew going in, if you had other people that took his class, they said, look, Newell, he lets you take home quizzes, and open note exams. And you're going, that wasn't a cakewalk. But it wasn't, right? So when I took the class, I tried doing that, okay, I'll take home the quiz, I'll figure it out, and I'll do it, and I bombed on it. Damn, I'll still do the work, okay, fine. So by the third class, I still remember this, I'd always have questions. And because I'm not a shy person, I do the homework, and I'd say question 17, right? And I get to a point on the problem, and instead of wasting the time, I'd go up to the board and start writing down what the problems were, and then he'd help me solve the rest of it. And mind you, the rest of the class is learning off my work, because they're just doing the exam, they didn't care. And in true David fashion, by the 5th class, does anybody have any questions today? Mr. Combs, do you have any questions from your homework? And from then on, that's how every class was, and I did well in the class and helped out and everything else. And then I took the next class, the finite class, the next semester, and did the same thing. Well, come to find out, I didn't know he lived in Long Beach, but I was a produce guy at the Ralph's over Marina Pacifica, if you guys all know where that is. And he used to come in while I was working. And to see David pushing a basket, like a shopping cart, was like he was holding a matchbox. He was such a big guy, right? And he used to come visit me, then I transferred to Long Beach State, and he asked me how I was doing, and I tell him and everything else, and his class helped me with the calculus test, et cetera, et cetera. And about 2 years into it, he says, Mr. Combs, when are you graduating? And I said, well, actually, I'm graduating this semester. And he says, well, what time is it? And I'm sitting there going, all right, okay. My graduation is this day, this time. Well, as I'm walking up, I get out of my chair, and I see people standing up. I see David standing in line at the ropes where we're walking by. I had no idea he was even coming. So he hands me this gift card from Office Depot, and I used it to buy a briefcase that I still use today. We lost a giant. Education lost a giant, and he can't be replaced.
It is said you never know when you create a memory. So what kind of memories are we creating with one another?
I'm going to do a little backing up, and I'm going to talk about the power of one. David was definitely in education. At one point in California, we have a gentleman, I'm not sure he's a gentleman, a senator out of Orange County, who introduced an initiative called the Briggs Initiative. And it was very scary, because what it meant that if you were gay or lesbian, or you were a friend of gays and lesbians, you would lose your job. And go back to the power of one. The major organization in California for teachers was California Teachers Association. And California Teachers Association was not taking a position on that initiative, except one teacher, David Hensley, who's here with us today, got state council to get policy so they could take a position, and we were able to beat that. Now, what happened after that was gays and lesbians started feeling a little bit freer about their lives, and Los Angeles, for example, started a program called Project 10. Well, Long Beach wanted to do something similar, but Long Beach is not Los Angeles in so many ways. We still are out Iowa by the sea. Not so much now, but we were. And so we wanted to do something about that. And we got an agreement that we could at least have some staff development. And we had two scheduled, Jordan High School in the north and Wilson High School. Jordan High School had a huge number of people show up and disrupt the whole training, and Wilson High School got canceled. Now, David became involved because he was working, number one, against the Briggs Initiative politically, and then he was, at that point, was very active, of course, in Lambda, had been president, was active at the state level in the Democratic Party, and so a group of us approached the superintendent. I was then at that point very involved in the Teachers Association, and we approached the superintendent about doing something. And he absolutely refused to do anything about any additional training. Well, you have to understand school board members are elected. So when some school board members were approached by Dave and other people about what we needed to do for schools in Long Beach, Carl Cohn, who was the superintendent at the time, agreed to have meetings with us. And for several months, David was there at those meetings making the difference. And now we have had staff development, required staff development at every high school. Most of our high schools have now a Gay Straight Alliance. And all of that happened because of that one person, again, doing what you can do. And Dave was one who was there doing. We will miss him badly. Thank you.
Never underestimate the power of one. What a great story, thank you. That means that your stories are also important, each of your stories. So I invite you to come forward. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Shoak, and I knew Dave a long, long time ago. And I'm quite sure it was Dave who asked if we would have a fundraiser to oppose the Briggs Initiative in our backyard, which we were delighted to do. And what I can tell you is, as people were coming, some of you who used to go to city council meetings a long time ago knew Bobby Bible. He would sit in the back with these giant signs. Do you remember that, anybody? Yes. So at any rate, Bobby Bible came to our sidewalk and started walking back and forth with his giant sign and saying unkind things to the guests at our fundraiser. And various people asked him to please leave, and he would walk, because as long as he was walking, he had every right to be on the public sidewalk. And my husband went out and asked him to leave. I went out, I said, these are our guests. Finally, my husband, in desperation, asked the people at the table outside to step inside. He turned on the sprinklers. Bobby walked across the street and started shouting at our guests, turned off the sprinklers, invited him back. A policeman came along and very quietly walked with Bobby Bible back and forth. Bobby put the sign under his arm and walked away, all because of Dave asking us to have a fundraiser. So.
My name is Claire Hirsch, and Dave Newell was my friend. We met through U.S.-China Friendship Association and worked for Friendship with China when that was not very popular. Today, there are so many exchanges on so many levels, but we spent lots of time going out into the community and talk about the People's Republic of China when most people didn't know about it. And so Dave and I got very involved, and we would meet in convention all over the country, different places, and we became better and better friends. One day, we talked about our family, and we discovered that both of us had sisters in Petaluma. So we got the two sisters together, and they became great friends. And then we became friends with the family as well. And one time, we all were in Petaluma, and it came up that Dave was a commissioner. Well, so was Donna, and so was I. So we were showing off. There were 3 commissioners. Over the years, they would come to Thanksgiving dinner at my house, and we discovered that we both liked music. I was not as well versed as Dave was, but he invited me to concerts, and up until almost the very end, we went to the opera, and we went to concerts, and we went to the Hollywood Bowl when he could barely walk, but nothing ever kept him down from going. We had many good times together. And I went to see him in the hospital several times, and I'm so glad I did. I asked him one day what could I do for him, and he said, I'd like nothing better than a glass of cranberry juice. So I went out in the hall, and he wasn't getting any regular food. I asked the nurse, and she brought him a glass of juice, and he enjoyed it so much, and he thanked me for doing that. So I'm glad I was there. Many years ago, my husband and I attended a Lambda dinner on the Queen Mary, and lots of pictures were taken, and we had a great time. And I brought the picture home and showed it to my granddaughter, who was 5 years old at the time. So I said, do you know anybody in the picture? And she said, no. I said, isn't that Grandma and Grandpa? And she said, no. And then she said, isn't that Dave Newell? So the 5-year-old made an impression. I shall miss him sorely.
I'm James Bigelow. Dave Newell and I were friends for 30 years, and in addition to, wore a lot of hats, played a lot of roles in my life in those 30 years, including friend, confidant, fellow recovering alcoholic, and concert benefactor. I saw 2 complete cycles of Wagner's Ring Cycle on his dime, which I never would have been able to afford. And we shared a specific interest in a kind of music that not a lot of people, a lot of people like music, and a lot of people like classical music, but they had a special interest in an advanced kind of counterpoint. And it sort of is the K2 or the Mount Everest of achievement in Western classical music tradition. It was at the end of Beethoven's life that he started writing this kind of advanced music, and it was, J.S. Bach is well known for this music. But Dave, the way I would characterize this music is that it's definitely appeals to the brainiacs like Dave, because it's pure logic, and but the best composers also infuse it full of heart. So it's a union of the two in a way that no other music really achieves. And what I wanted to say was that over the years I knew him, I came from a place of being a very tormented young drug addict, and through the program and knowing people like him, I evolved into I went to college and then to graduate school in music, and I've gone on to have a good life, but along the way I've encountered a lot of more like difficult times, and because we saw each other so frequently in the course of going to these concerts, he often was the only person there to talk, I would talk to him about it. And the thing that I noticed about Dave was that the way that he responded to me was really different than the way a lot of people responded. He would stop and pause and apply both his intelligence and his heart to his response. When I look back at it now, there were some pretty intractable and difficult issues, that didn't seem like there was going to ever be an easy way out for me. And that's something that I started watching and trying to learn from him. And I don't know if I've ever gotten to be as good at it as he is, any better than, I could write a few, like JS Bach or anything like that. But I do know that it will be something for me to aspire to. And it is that kind of unique combination of heart and intelligence that is so rare to run into, at least in the circles I run in. And it's, I don't think I would have made it, through some of the stuff I made it through if it hadn't been through him. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Raymond, and I've known Dave roughly since the year 2000. And yes, Dave was a brilliant man, and he was an educated man, and a man of many passions that he felt strongly about. But I myself am a man with all of an 8th grade education. And my experience in the past with more highly educated people is that they can be very condescending and cutting, and I had learned to intimidate them. But Dave was not that way at all. He had something about his personality that crushed through barriers, and his kindness and his giving heart. And I only hope that in my lifetime I can learn to be half as good a man as he was. Thank you.
My name is Jerry, I'm an alcoholic, and I knew Dave for a long time. I never knew him well, and I never spent much time with him. But I came to admire him greatly as an exemplary human being. He was generous, giving, loving, and I don't think anybody is entirely selfless. I certainly am not. But he came close. He was a very fine person. And I too my musical interests were the same. I'm an opera queen and classical music lover. And I benefited greatly from David's tickets. He would send me the schedule of all of his concerts for the year. Opera, the Philharmonic, chamber music series, all kinds of stuff. And this is when he could hardly walk. And I have a hard time walking, but I'm Fred Astaire in comparison to Dave Newell. But he could get in his car, and he could go places, and he did. And I went to a lot of concerts with him, and saw him sit in these seats that were really awful for him. And he was generous in his donations to the opera, to LA Opera, and to the Philharmonic, and worked with them to get seats he could sit in. And he finally succeeded with the opera company, but just a season or two ago. The one he had in Disney Hall, I don't know how he sat there. We would go sometimes, and at the top of the aisle was an empty space for people in wheelchairs, and they had some they had chairs and they would sit them up there when there wasn't somebody sitting in it with a ticket. He benefited greatly from that. But I just, he was a rare, good person. Excuse me. And I just wanted to say that because I think those who knew him knew that. But I just admired him greatly, living his life as he did, especially in the latter part of his life when he was so impaired, and keeping active. He could become housebound. And in fact, I said that. And he said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to become housebound. So he went as much as he could go until the end. And I have a footnote to the Briggs story. I forgot when that was, a long time ago. But I was a member of the ACLU Gay Rights Committee, and we campaigned against it. And we all got to be collective grand marshals in one of the early gay pride parades in Long Beach. And we were on this truck, and the truck took off. And we got like 4 or 5 blocks ahead of the parade. We looked back, and there they were, way back there, and we were way up there. But, that was an experience. Thank you.
I see some people getting nudged, psyching me out here. We have 2. Perfect.
I'm Doug, and I'm an alcoholic, and I met David Newell in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. It wasn't exactly in the cards. In the cards that our paths would have converged in any other place. I despise math. I despise politics, but I do remember this. I met David almost 35 years ago, so we go back a long, long way. He got sober the year of another memorable statesman, Howard Jarvis, who was doing Prop 13 at the time. I was in my last alcoholic apartment, and we won't go there. And when I met him, of course, he had 5 years of sobriety, and I was counting my sobriety in days. And I thought he was a pompous ass. And after all, I'm a pompous ass, I don't know. And it was sort of like chalk and cheese. We did not hit it off. But he did become my sponsor, and I was the first person that he ever sponsored, poor devil. He was, sad to say, an apprentice sponsor. And all the mistakes you can make sponsoring someone, he did. Except for firing me, or maybe that's in addition to firing me. We were kind of strict back then. I had made the decision to drink at 18 months of sobriety, and I was headed out the door, and the telephone rang, and a newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous stopped me in my tracks, and I didn't call Dave, and I had no intention of calling him. We found out at a meeting 3 days later, and then the following Friday, we were at a big old convention up in LA, AA related, and he fired me. And it was, I must say, I suspect he may have been gay because he had a great flair for the dramatic. We were up in LA in this huge room with not exactly his kind of music, nor mine for that matter. It was acid rock. And in the din of all that noise and alleged syncopation, he fired me because apparently he wanted to do it as fast as he could. And I don't know, it was kind of cloak and dagger, I thought. I realize, after all, with all of his political, all the things that you've heard, my only, what was my only thing? It had something, oh yes, all this political nostalgia. I was going to say something really cute about, oh, I guess it was Howard Jarvis, so I already did that. Obviously, I'm no spring chicken myself, and it's beginning to show. I knew David before he became this paragon of rectitude, and I mean, thank God, because I couldn't have borne it if I wouldn't have approached the mountain had he been the person that I met almost 35 years ago. We were both having a very tough time. I picked him because he was the only admitted atheist in the group, and that was my profession. And I was terrified of him, but of course I was perfectly willing to go down in flames before I would let him know that. And so I was a college dropout, and I would say these really sweet things to him, like, because he made no secret of the fact that he had a PhD, and I said, you know, that stands for higher and higher and deeper. And so I didn't exactly endear myself to him, and all of this before he sponsored me, and his first sponsor had been my first sponsor, a man named Charles Eastman, who had 25 years of sobriety when I got sober in 1981. And one fine day, Dave called me and asked me if I wanted to go to Charles's memorial. And his health was just beginning to give way at that point. I think it was 2009 or 2010 when Charles died. And we had I remember every single thing about that day because I had no car. I had, I don't know what surgery, how many surgeries I'd had on my eye at that time, but Dave had a car and I didn't. And we talked about a number of things. And the people who were at Charles's memorial were quite an assortment. Charles wrote for the movies, and that's why I picked him as my first sponsor, because I was going to be the next. Well, it could have happened. And it still could. Anyway, I realized years and years and years later, after all, I mean, it only took me 10 years to forgive him for firing me, so, you know, I'm not exactly the most compassionate creature in the world, and I realized that from the time I met from the time I met David until that moment, and that was a number of years ago, a few changes had taken place in him. Not nearly enough of them had taken place in me, and that is what we have found in recovery, what I found and what Dave found too. We were a couple of very hard nuts. I met David and I was just days from having, I was living on the streets and had been for 4 years. So my disease took me all the way down, and David had a really tough time with he said he was introduced to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous by an invitation from the state of California. So we both had a horror story about how we got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he and I are certifiable when it comes to miracles. I'm certifiable in a couple of other respects before you start murmuring among yourselves. And so this is what I have encountered in my trudging my road of happy destiny, that someone said, this crazy, wonderful guy from the South Bay said, we get him from Newell and we get him from jail, and that kind of pretty much covered Dave Newell and yours truly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
My name is William Bucher, and I teach mathematics at West LA College, where Dave, I'm a little hearing impaired, so I can't hear my own self, so, okay? Good to go. I met Dave probably, it was about 25 years ago. It was around 1990, 1991. And I had been teaching at West LA for a fair long time. And I was going on sabbatical, so they had to hire someone to replace me for the year. And we interviewed, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 people. And I was immediately struck by Dave. And, okay, the reason why I was struck by Dave was A, number one, he was brilliant. But B, number two, he was really funny. The man had a sense of humor. He had us laughing at the interview. And that's kind of a risky thing to do, to sort of be cracking jokes in the middle of your interview presentation. And so we hired him. He was my replacement for that year. And then he worked for us on and off, and an opportunity came to hire him in 2001. And again, he just wowed us, mostly with his brilliance also. And I spent his last 10 years, he retired in 2011, with Dave. And Dave had an office down the hall from me. And during this period, I was chair of the math department. I would wish that on my worst enemy. And I would be pulling out my hair. And I would go, I gotta do something. I would be being entirely oppressed by the administration, trying to figure out some way to counter their last bit of deviousness. And I would go down the hall for comic relief. I would go, Dave, do you know what they're doing? He would go, no, but tell me. And I would tell him. He would just make me feel better about the whole thing. And I don't know, I really miss him. He was a great colleague. Probably one of the best I've ever had. And I've had a lot.
Any others? So, yes.
Okay, well, this is definitely Southern California. And I'm Donna, and I'm David's sister. And I just want to thank you all for coming, and everything that you had to say is just really incredible. I mean, I knew a lot of it, of course. I used to try to play Monopoly with him. You don't play games with Dave, he always won. But, he's a wonderful person, and all of that. And I just think you're all wonderful people for coming, and that's all I really want to say. You just really made this for me, and I'm so glad that we were able to get together. Thank you.
So as all of you are sharing your stories and your memories of Dave, I wanted to pull up a poem that always resonates for me, and hopefully it resonates for you as you begin to think about all the many ways that Dave has been so influential in your life. The poem is by Linda Ellis. And it says, I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth, which spoke the following dates with tears. But he said that what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth. And now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? for you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? We are indeed so grateful for the dash that is Dave Newell, that has expressed so graciously and in such a grand way through our lives. We are forever changed because of him. And now, even because of this gathering to celebrate and honor his life, we are indeed affected by it and by one another. So go forth, beloveds, and be in the dash. Be conscious in your dash. Enjoy your dash. Enjoy the music, the math, the people, the protests, the fights, the struggles, the pain, the tears. Enjoy it all. And through it all, remember how Dave has lived his magnificent and wonderful life. So this brings our time to a close. This particular memory of him to a close. However, the family has so lovingly prepared a place for us to simply be as we enjoy some beverages, some food and refreshments, and as we continue to meet and greet one another, as we continue to also maybe share one-on-one or in smaller groups, stories and memories about our beloved Dave Newell. Because many of us knew him in so many various ways. Please remember to be gentle with yourselves, especially once we leave one another. Remember to be conscious and consciously aware as we travel, that in our grief and in our sadness, that we can absolutely feel that and release that in such productive ways, but we want to make sure that we stay conscious so that we arrive to our next destination in a safe and fulfilling manner. On behalf of the family, we want to thank you for being here, and we invite you now to simply enjoy one another's company and the refreshments provided. Thank you.